All right. It is my pleasure tonight to welcome Dr. Pat Regan, former professor of political science and peace studies in the Keough School at Notre Dame. He is now the founder of Crossroads Solar, a startup solar panel company here in South Bend, whose core mission is to provide jobs and life training opportunities for recently released felons. We're excited to hear your story, Pat. Joining him are 4 undergraduate engineers who have worked with him this summer to set up the operation. They will be introduced by tonight's moderator, Kelly Moran. Kelly is a senior mechanical engineer, energy studies minor, and a member of the Student Energy Board with Indy Energy. Kelly, go ahead.
Thanks, Ginger, for that introduction. Hi, everyone. So first I'm going to turn around and introduce my fellow undergraduate engineers. So first off, we have James Hegarty, who's also a senior mechanical engineer with me. And then next up, we have Sylvia Kolda, who's a senior electrical engineering major. And last but not least, of course, rounding out our team is Erin Ludwig, who's a junior environmental engineering major. So first, we're going to show you guys all a video of Crossroads Solar, and this video is going to be kind of a walkthrough of the factory, and it's going to show you and give you a good glimpse at all the machines that are needed for the process of making a solar panel. Awesome. Thank you, Ginger, for playing that video. Hopefully you guys got a better idea of what Crossroads Solar actually looks like from that. So for our first discussion panel, my fellow engineers and I are going to ask Pat a couple questions about how he got started with Crossroads Solar. So first off, Pat, could you speak more to your vision behind Crossroads Solar and how it all really got started?
Kelly, this is Marty, and I think Pat just texted me and said that he's been kicked off due to bad internet. So with your permission, maybe I can jump in and give you a little bit of history.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thanks, Marty.
Okay. My name is Marty Whalen, and Pat and I teach out at the Moreau College Initiative at Westville Prison. And we thought that that's a program that Notre Dame and Holy Cross runs, where men can get associate's degrees and even a bachelor's degree. But there's really a daunting hill for them to climb after they get these degrees and get out. So we thought, what better way than to start a 21st century business of making solar panels and and giving these guys an honest start in life. So we have a very flat structure. Pat makes about $45,000 a year, and the men will make $17 to $20 an hour. So all of them are going to be formerly incarcerated. And Pat and I then started to, Pat's back on?
I made it. For some reason it's kicking me out all the time. So, but you can keep going, Marty.
No, handle it, and I'll jump in if the internet kicks you back off.
Am I in or out?
We can hear you, Pat.
I think you.
Pat, you're in. Can you hear? Okay, sorry about that. Just a minute. So just to pick that up, Pat and I incorporated a company called Crossroads Solar with the idea, sometimes you may hear this in the business world, of the triple bottom line. And that typically is profits, planet, and people. But our triple bottom line is people, planet, profits, in that order. So Pat went over to China, investigated some manufacturing equipment. We found a company that makes machines that you saw in use, and we entered into a contract. Interestingly, using Notre Dame Law School free clinic legal advice, they negotiated our contract, and we've been up and running now for 10 days and making panels. So Pat's still frozen, so go ahead, Kelly, if you want me to say any more, or talk a little bit about how you guys entered the fray.
Yeah, thanks for that, Marty. James had a question next about Pat's kind of vision and why he left his job, but maybe we'll see that for a little bit later to see if Pat comes back in. But Erin, did you want to ask your question?
Sure, yeah. So my question is, in tackling any challenge, there will obviously be many obstacles along the way. So I was wondering if you could speak about some of the obstacles that you encountered along the way in terms of planning the company, setting up the plant, and any administration tasks involved in Crossroads. And then also, how did you overcome these obstacles?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, Erin. The answer is yes, we've had a lot of headwinds. We did do a business plan, and that stems even back from the beginning of 2019. But you guys will learn that some of the best laid plans often go astray once you start implementing. So just certain things, like for instance, we wanted to see if we could source some manufacturing equipment in the United States. And the answer was no. We did find some in Germany, we did find some in Italy, and we found some in China. And the Chinese equipment was about 1/10 of the price of the German equipment. But we found a lot of the controllers in these things probably were similar in both. So that's one thing. Another problem or headwind we encountered was tariffs. And so while we were negotiating with the Chinese company, our president was entering and then getting rid of trade agreements and putting all kinds of tariffs. We've actually had a high six-figure tariff that we hadn't planned on. Another thing that we didn't understand or know is that the little 6-inch solar cells, they cannot be shipped via traditional ocean-going freight. We have to air freight those. So a skid of those costs us about $4,000 to air freight in. And finally, one of the biggest things is one of those big machines, that Tabor stringer, I think, was made in Wuhan, China. And so obviously we had difficulty getting it. And part of the agreement was that the company would send over 3 engineers who would then calibrate and set the machine up to make sure it was running. That could have been the laminator or the Tabor stringer or both. And that's where our crack staff of engineering student interns came this summer. So.
Thanks, Marty. Sylvia, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, so thanks for talking about some of those obstacles that you overcame. It's a great feat that you did bringing it to life. But as an engineer, I've been taught to always be looking ahead towards the future. So that being said, what do you envision for Crossroads Solar's future?
Well, honestly, we envision some of the headwinds continuing. Right now, we're in the midst of a 2-week production cycle where we have to make 25 perfect panels, and then we're going to send those off to certification, and the certification process takes 90 days. So we are going to shut down production for 90 days and then hire our workers back and train them. Going forward, like I said, we've had some issues with some unexpected expenses like freight. And strangely enough, we always knew that our workforce would require some, how do I put this the right way? Some mercy, some grace. And we've already lost one to a drug test, and another one didn't come back the second day. So we do think that we're going to have to spend a lot of time hand-holding. You've got to understand that some of these men, we have 2 men that have never held a job, and one's 37 years old. He's never had anything that's given him a W-2. And it's interesting that when we asked, why do you want to work? He said, I have 5 children, and he said, I want them to see their father going to work every day. So we don't have the traditional workforce, and that can be a good and a bad thing. But we really do have projections laid out. The good part is that anybody we've told our story to seems to really resonate with what we're doing. So there's two big factors there. Number one is the story that we're trying to give men a fighting chance back to change their life, the trajectory of their life. But the second thing is domestic production of solar panels. It just isn't done. There are some big companies, but they're foreign owned. And so we have a leg up when it comes to government contracts, when it comes to a lot of initiatives about Buy American. We'll be one of the very few companies that can play in that arena. So we're hopeful that that we'll be able to sell enough of these to keep a lot of guys employed.
Great, thank you. James, you want to go ahead with your question now to Marty?
Sure. I don't really know if Pat can hear me, but my question is really, so Pat used to work as a professor at Notre Dame a few years ago.
I can hear you.
Okay, so if Pat can hear me, then what kind of, obviously you had this vision for Crossroads Solar, but what was it that really made you act and quit your job as a professor to take this up full time?
Are there? It was in life back in some way that I for a whole career, you folks, my whole career opportunity that other people in other ways. That minimizes the trauma of quitting my job at Notre Dame. And you know, if I didn't do it now, I could never do it. Be the thing. I could have never done it at your age, and I could never do it much older than I am now. So it was just the opportunity was there to make it happen. So, and I know I'm breaking up. I know the technology. I think what happened when I quit Notre Dame, they didn't update my Zoom, and so I'm working on 3 generations out of the Zoom software. Somebody keeps kicking me out. Yeah.
Thanks, Pat. It sounded a little better at the end there. Just to recap for some people, Pat really wanted to take this opportunity, and he felt that if he didn't do it now, he would never have the chance. So that kind of is what gave him the driving force to go off and quit his university job. So I think next we're going to transition into more of a student-led discussion, and we're going to talk kind of about our role on the team for Crossroads Solar. So just to start off and give you guys some background for how this kind of got started. So Sylvia, Erin, and I all joined a class last January through the College of Engineering. The class is called SERO, which stands for Student Engineers Reach Out. So this class is led by Paul Brenner, a professor at the school. And in this class, we work with a variety of local community organizations working on projects for them. Usually they're engineering related. And so last semester, one of our biggest projects was helping Pat out with Crossroads Solar. So all the work we were doing during the school year was prior to all the machines coming in. So some of the things that we did with Pat was we were working on floor plan layouts. So this kind of involved considering pneumatic and electrical considerations of where to put the different machines. And another thing we worked on was drafting some specification sheets for his solar panels. So that kind of is a sheet that you would give to someone who's interested in buying solar panels, and it tells them all the technical specs of your panels. And so kind of how we got involved in this summer opportunity of helping set up the machines was unfortunately due to COVID. So originally when Pat had got the machines from China, they were supposed to come with a team of Chinese engineers to come set up his factory. When COVID came, that obviously wasn't really feasible with the borders being closed and whatnot. Likewise, a lot of us had our internships canceled or shortened. So there's kind of an opportunity that arose from those ashes there. And Pat had reached out to our class, and he told us about kind of his situation that he was going through, told us that he was looking for a team of engineers that would be able to maybe set up these machines. And I think the ball really got rolling from there. Along the way, we picked up James, and he was added to our team with his mechanical engineering background. That was vital in setting up some of those machines. So James, next you want to speak about what kind of affects you most about the communication with the China and how we had to communicate with some of the Chinese engineers to set up those machines?
Sure. Yeah, one of my favorite things about working at Crossroads Solar was our ability to communicate with the international engineers in China. And so a lot of the work that we did was independent, and we were reading manuals and just sort of figuring it out as we went. We also received a lot of guidance from the engineers as well. And so to communicate with them, we had a group chat with about 10 engineers all in China. And for the most part, none of them spoke any English. And so every message that we got from them, we would translate through Google Translate and then try to decipher that translation. And presumably they were doing the same thing for us on the other side. And so you can imagine there was a lot of difficulty getting over that language barrier. Additionally, we also had limited time each day to ask them questions because of the 12-hour time difference. And so we couldn't hold them well past midnight their time, and we had to be efficient with our communication each day. And then for us 4 engineers, we were only available for a limited amount of time. And so we were often juggling 3 conversations about 3 different machines all at once. And so we have faced a lot of challenges around communication, and we had to get past a lot of different barriers. But I think in the end, for the four of us, we were all able to greatly improve our communication skills. And so I would say that our ability to communicate with those engineers, despite our 12-hour time difference and not speaking the same language, was really the thing that impressed me the most about the summer with Crossroads Solar.
Great, thank you, James, for that insight onto the communication process with China. So next up, Sylvia, what impressed you most about kind of the teamwork aspect, how we had to all come together to make these machines start working?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. So when I first heard about this opportunity, I wasn't really sure what to expect. I kind of just figured I'd show up and Pat would be like, okay, Sylvia, you're going to work on that machine and like figure out how to do it by yourself. But that was far from the truth. We ended up all working together the entire time, and through that teamwork, we were able to accomplish our goal. So I found three main benefits through like working with others. The first was having just a second set of eyes on the problem, also being able to bounce ideas off of each other, and finally having different educational backgrounds. So like I said, it was nice to have multiple sets of eyes working on a problem. So for example, this really came into handy when we were assembling the equipment. So everything kind of just arrived in piles of parts, and we had a picture of the end product, but no instructions on how to assemble it. So it was nice to have multiple people looking at the different parts and looking at the picture and saying, I think this part might go with this machine, and then someone else to just be like, no, that can't be right. That piece of steel, it definitely wouldn't go there. Or just to look at the picture and be like, oh, the piece juts out here. This piece has definitely got to go with this machine. So it was nice to have multiple sets of eyes looking at the pictures when we were assembling the parts. Also, it was helpful to have multiple people to be able to bounce ideas off of each other. It helps organize thoughts and also just resulted in more ideas. So an example of this, we were trying to get the glass plates to stop in the right location when we were running the laminator. So how the laminator works is you put the panels on one end, it goes into the laminator, laminates it, and then comes out the other end. And it's supposed to automatically stop when it gets to the end. But what was happening is it wouldn't do that until the sensors sensed that the panel was about to fall off, and the emergency stop would prevent it from doing that. So our task was to solve that problem. It was a lot of trial and error with the parameters. So it was nice to have like someone else to be able to be like, what do you think about changing this parameter? And the person could reply, no, like it's definitely not that one. I think maybe this one looks like we might need to change it 5. And then the other person to be like, no, a little bit less than that. And just to kind of be able to bounce ideas off of each other. Because I know personally, if it were just myself doing it, I would just be staring at the screen, not even sure where to start. So talking definitely helped get the ball rolling there. And then finally, it was helpful to have people with different backgrounds to give us different perspectives on the problems. So I'm an electrical engineering major, so like I have that electrical background, and for me the first problem I think of every time would be, oh, something must be wrong with the power. So it's nice to have like James and Kelly, who are mechanical engineers, to like think of more of the physical or mechanical problems. So one instance of where that was helpful, we had another error with the laminator. We had a brush lift error. And so the belt is supposed to automatically clean itself, but it wasn't doing this. And so I was looking in the software, trying to figure out some problem there. And then James noticed that the brush wasn't even spinning correctly at the right time. So like him thinking to look more at like the physical aspect was very helpful in that situation. So just to kind of like wrap up, I'm very thankful that it was not just me working on this. It was great to have James and Kelly and Erin helping as well. And through this teamwork, we were able to get another set of eyes on the situation, bounce ideas off each other, and have different perspectives, and that ultimately let us get the job done.
Thanks, Sylvia. I definitely agree with your points. I think a funny story that I was remembering is when we were working on the laminator, and me and James were kind of putting together some of the more mechanical parts of it. And you're like, and we got to the wiring part, and you're like, hey guys, can I do the wiring? And we're like, yeah, Sylvia, go ahead. Like, that's your spot. That's your specialty. Great. So Erin, you coming in with an environmental engineering background, can you talk to more about what your role was on the team? Because you weren't always on the floor helping us set up the nuts and bolts of the machines. So can you talk to more about what you did on the side?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Erin. So last fall, I attended the Sustainability Expo at Notre Dame, and that's where I first met Pat, and I was just immediately inspired by his vision. So then later on, I received an email about an opportunity to work with Pat through the student engineers reaching out class that Kelly was talking about earlier. So I applied to be a part of this team, and that's how I soon became involved with Crossroads. As the semester came to an end, I joined the summer internship team where I had the task to write an employee handbook for Crossroads Solar to help instruct employees as they get started in the manufacturing of solar panels at Crossroads. Having little prior knowledge on the manufacturing of solar panels, even with a great interest in solar energy, this task presented me with quite a challenge. In order to create this handbook, I used online resources, including articles and videos, corresponded with an employee from Zenith Solar in China about information on the machinery, and gathered insight from Pat and the other Notre Dame students working in the plant. The handbook ended up providing general notes about solar technology as well as specific details about the solar panel production process. It gives information regarding startup and shutdown procedures, as well as information and images pertaining to the general flow of production and what tasks should be carried out at each machine and stage of production. This task has allowed me to grow in so many ways, and I'm so thankful to have had this unique opportunity to work with Crossroads. I'm excited to continue working with Pat this coming semester in order to continue making a difference in South Bend, as well as raising awareness for the importance of solar energy. Thank you.
Thanks, Erin. Yeah, your manual is definitely going to help the whole team at Crossroads Solar get started with their project of making those solar panels. So next, I think we're going to go into a Q&A session. So as Ginger was saying earlier, if you guys want to raise your hands in the audience using that feature under the participants window, or if you want to type them in the chat, we'll try to field some questions from you guys. Abby, do you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question about that 3-month period when you had to kind of send the panels out for their certification. Is there any support for the workers or employees during that time if they can't be working at the manufacturing plant? Like, is there anything else that they can be doing? Or are they kind of expected to, I don't know, like figure things out on their own and then jump back in when you can up production again?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Abby. Pat, are you online? Want to speak to that?
I could try. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. You know, we have tried everywhere for support to help fund these guys, put them to work, really, frankly, in the city. And even though everybody thinks it's a really great idea, nobody's really
You're cutting out a little bit.
Yeah, I'm trying to call in. I don't know.
Marty, you could pick that up for him?
Yeah, I can handle that.
The key part of it come up with is we just let them all scramble. You got, Marty, if you can help me.
Yeah, I think what Pat was saying there is that we really investigated many options, including potential temp placements for them, perhaps working for the city. But at the end of the day, most of them have somewhere else to go for this 3-month period. As a matter of fact, a couple of the guys are working 2 jobs right now during this period. And they know that they're going to come back after the 90 days. And we're going to need more. I think we're down to 6 people right now, but the 6 people have been doing a pretty good job, and we're keeping our head above water to make these panels to go to certification. But when we get cranking, we're going to need to make 60 panels a day. And so we will have a workforce of 10 to 12 people at that point. I have to tell you that the state of Indiana and the city of South Bend and the Department of Corrections has been really, really helpful at every turn, trying to help us and help our guys. So that's a great question. It's not an ideal, but you can imagine for a little startup like us, paying people for 30 days, we just don't have the work for them, it would cripple us. Great question.
Thank you.
Kelly, do you want me to take a couple of these questions?
Yeah, sure. So starting off with Nathaniel.
Yeah, so I see Nathaniel asked, who will be buying them? And the other question from Kathy is, how will you market your product? So for about a year, we've been gently telling our story to outlets. Pat actually went to a trade show out in Las Vegas last year and talked to a lot of people. It's important to understand that we are a manufacturer only. We will not be installing panels. So we will be selling our panels to installers. And to give you some idea, you know, there's gigawatt scale companies that are putting up solar panel farms that we're gonna make 5 megawatts a year, 20,000 panels, which is gonna be a lot for us. But there are some places that have jobs that might be 10 years of our production. We don't want to have one customer necessarily, and typically those are very, very competitive deals. But that doesn't mean that a company that is even participating on that utility scale, that we might not take a portion of that bid and make our panels. The other thing that Pat's done a great job doing some legwork on the sales is a company called it's not a company, it's a venture of something called Catholic Energy. Pat, are you back? I think you're muted. Okay, we're still having some technical difficulties. But Catholic Energy is a Catholic organization in Washington, D.C. that has $30+ million to, you guys probably have heard of Pope John, or Pope Francis is Laudate Si. Okay. Anyway, they're looking to solarize or do alternative energy for churches, hospitals, and Catholic grade schools. They love what we're doing. And we've had a local company say, look, we'll buy all the panels you can make for us. So we really think that we are going to be able to get rid of the panels. The other thing I want to mention is, in our company, all of the men are going to be trained, cross-trained to do a lot of different things. So it will not be unusual for some of these men to be going on sales calls. And they're going to have to know the game. And what better way when you're trying to sell these products than have somebody who's there. So I hope that answers those questions. Keep going, Pat. You were muted. Can you hop on and look at a question or two? Pat, you're still muted.
So I am on my phone. Huh? I'm doing this via phone, but if I unmute, I get too much feedback.
Yeah, I hear it.
But,
okay.
how about this? Better?
No,
It's just a disaster.
Okay. Are the workers educated on the science engineering aspect of the solar product, solar panels, or more just the manufacturing process? At this point, they're only educated on the manufacturing process. So we've cross-trained them where we can. We were already seeing in this first 2-week period that some are better at soldering, some are better at layup. It depends on the dexterity and the the level of detail of some of these people. Frankly, I've been there this week and they won't even let me near these silicon panels. I break them all the time. They're like extremely fragile, and evidently I don't have a lot of manual dexterity anymore. So long term, what we would like to do is educate the whole worker, and that would involve not only the manufacturing process, but a little bit of the science and engineering, but also things like personal finance and how to read a balance sheet and all aspects of a business, so that going forward, they're not just making a living wage, they're really sharpening their skills to be able to do anything in their future. Okay.
All right,
Thinking.
so let's let Tom ask his question.
Pardon?
Tom Purical, you have a question?
Yeah, actually, I just sent you.
Okay. Yeah, I can, Pat, you're still, yeah, you've got some feedback. Thinking about the opportunity to scale up models like this and attracting patient capital as a means of financing, what do you expect your payback period to be? Okay, I don't know if you're a business student. I was a sociology major from Notre Dame. I ended up getting an MBA and then running and selling a business. You'll be disappointed to hear that our payback is not necessarily going to be monetary. We very much believe that this is a social enterprise, and Pat and I have talked about it. If we have to run out and do what maybe a shift or even 2 shifts, we should be pretty profitable in theory at the end of year 3 and going forward from that. Neither Pat nor I are doing this as a play where we would sell it. We in our minds, what we might do, and a lot of things have to fall into place on this, but we would do what's called an ESOP, an employee stock ownership program, and we would sell it to the employees long term. So that's really the ultimate goal. We've got a very flat structure as far as pay. We've got a very flat structure as far as job titles and responsibilities. And it's kind of our thought that if we can ride with these guys and get them going well and do a true profit sharing plan where every year we are returning profits to those who help make it. And so there's 2 things. Number one, we would really like to impact some people's lives. But then the other thing, and this is straight from Pat's original idea, is we really want to do proof of concept. That number one, solar energy is here to stay and can be made domestically. Number 2, that men who have made a mistake in the past are worth redemption and can be productive members of society going forward. So if we do both of those things, our hope is that people see that and say, oh, we could probably do this, maybe even on a bigger scale, and help the planet and help people. So I hope that answers your question, Tom.
I might try if you can hear me, Tom. Thank you for your question. My life expectancy is probably 20 years. And I think that the real payoff comes at the end of my life expectancy in heaven or something like that. That's the way we see it playing out. And Marty and I have spoken to people who want to invest, and they talk about investing. I'm like, you're going to get your payoff in heaven. You're not going to get your payoff here.
Yeah, that usually ends that conversation.
It does end that conversation.
Okay, so we have a question from Samuel. If you could unmute, you can ask your questions.
Yeah, sorry. Clearly the startup process didn't go completely according to plan, but do you think that the amount of work and like the obstacles you had to overcome are the reason there aren't that many new startup like clean energy businesses in the United States? And do you think there are ways that we can make it easier for that to happen?
Well, I could take a shot at this, and since we're dog and pony it, Marty, you can chime in also. It seems to me the significant part of why we have a chance, successful yet, is that we have both in pay and responsibility, and it takes a lot one president who doesn't make as much as most of you will make when you get out of school. And there's no president, and there's no managers, no engineers or whatever. I think that just makes the this much more manageable. And I would go around the beginning, I would ask often mostly foreign manufacturers how they did X or how they did Y. Ask your engineer. Response would always be,
Oh, I think we lost Pat again. Okay, I see a couple other questions. Maybe I could field those. Yeah, a little bit about myself. I was a graduate of Notre Dame, and then I sold a business and retired, and I came back to Notre Dame 2 years ago. I actually was in the first class of the Inspired Leadership Initiative. I don't know if any of you have seen old people walking around campus going to college. So that's what I got to do. It was great. It's just like college. You get to take all the classes. And the joke we had was you take the classes, not pass, fail, but pass, pass. We couldn't even fail. So it was great. It's the way college should have been the first time around. Anyway, but Pat and I both work out at the prison. So Notre Dame and Holy Cross have a thing called Moreau College Initiative, and it's run it's run by Dr. Alicia Sarazinski out of Holy Cross. A lot of Holy Cross and Notre Dame faculty go out to the prison. Some of you have probably heard of the Inside Out program, but this is a little bit different where the men actually get associate's degrees and then a 4-year bachelor's degree as well. So Pat and I were both involved with that program, and that's kind of how we met. And then Dr. Sarazinski said that there's this crazy man that wants to start a business afterwards. Why don't you talk to him? So Pat and I met at the whatever that little restaurant is in Grace. And I think I had the question. I said, why would you ever want to do this? And the next thing I knew, I was his partner. So he's a very good salesperson. One other question here. How do we go about hiring your workers? Do you approach them or do they express interest in your business? I'd say it's a little bit of both. First of all, the guys in the program within the prison understand what we're doing. And of course, they all want to come out and have a job. It's really difficult for them to find housing, find transportation, and find a job. So they all want to work for us. But the Department of Corrections, typically when somebody gets out of prison, they're not finished with their sentence. They have some parole yet to do, and they're typically sent back to their home county where they have some support. So it's not uncommon for somebody to get out of that program and have to go down to Indianapolis or back to Fort Wayne. But the ones that are around here know about us. We've talked to them. And Dr. Sarazinski just hired somebody whose job it is. He used to be the rector at Stanford Hall, Justin McDivitt. And his job is going to be to make sure that he helps transition guys out of the program into jobs and help them after they get out. So we think there's going to be kind of a tight integration going forward. It's a great question, though. We are going to pay a living wage, but our goal is perhaps somebody comes to work for us for a year or two, get some skills under their belt, understand the kind of rhythm and how to work, and then find something even better in the future and moves on, so that people coming out of the prison in 2 years and 4 years then would be able to do that as well. We'll see how that works. That remains to be seen how it goes. Anyway, that's kind of our grand plan. But we do think that the guys who will be really good and rise up in our company may end up staying there quite a while. So good question, though.
Hey, Marty, if there are some people in the audience here today that are interested in helping or getting involved, I think perhaps they could try to get into the course that's being offered, but that's probably really limited. Are there any kinds of things that they could do to contribute?
Say some prayers at the grotto. That would be good. No, I think Pat's been really effective working with his fellow professors from Notre Dame. And I think that we have talked about anything we can do. We've had help, tremendous help, as you've heard from the student interns this year. Pat's using somebody for our marketing and newsletter and just kind of spreading the word. But it would be great to have classes come out and look at what we're doing. I can envision a business school or an MBA school coming out and helping us with our financial modeling. And I just think that anyway, maybe as a quick way, we do have a newsletter, and anybody who wanted to see what we're doing, we could put on that mailing list so that you could keep up to speed. And I'm just mwhalen2 at nd.edu, and Pat is just Crossroads Solar at gmail.com. So anybody, we'll take any help. But again, we're gonna get through this week and maybe Monday and Tuesday, and then we're gonna kind of have to shut down for a while. So, but appreciate the offer of help. And Pat, I don't know if you're still breaking up, but if you wanna, you can always just type in the chat box there if you think of anything we're missing here. Okay. And I see, Abigail, good question here. Can you speak to the recidivism rate of ex-convicts who go through career support training programs like this? Not specifically the career training and support programs, because that's a staple of prison, is that they have a lot of work things. But I can't speak to the recidivism rate and what college in prison does, this Moreau College initiative. So, typically, and this might surprise you, I wish we could have an interactive thing here, but typically the recidivism rate of somebody who goes back to prison within 3 years of getting out is about 66%. It's over 60% in our country. So we're doing something massively wrong. For those people who got college, an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, that number drops to about 5% or less. And the figures are from somebody who's been doing this for a long time, Bard Prison or Bard College with the Bard Prison Initiative. They've been doing it a lot longer than Holy Cross and Notre Dame have. So the numbers are clear that if we can support men, if we can get them educated, change the way they view the world, and then support them when they get out, they do pretty well. So as a taxpayer, and you people as future taxpayers, for my money, I'd much rather go this route than paying for 2/3 of people to get back in school. Oh, there you go, Pat.
There's a long list, and it grows.
Yeah, why don't you type your email address into the chat as well?
Oh.
All right, we have time for a few more questions if anyone wants to ask anything.
I could ask either Kelly to come back, because the laminator kept breaking down at the end of the last 2 days. And it was about the ejection. I think Kelly, or maybe it was Sylvia, talking about it was the ejection of the last panel in a stream of panels get stuck in there. And they're 250 degrees plus hot, and you got to yank them out, and it's hard to do. So a little engineering help on the side may go. That would be a question, like, would you come back?
The job never ends, right?
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, so Pat was saying some of the things we'll be working on this semester with him through our forward credit class at Notre Dame is, one of our tasks right now is to kind of compare new cells that Pat's considering. So a manufacturer approached him that is trying to get him to buy bifacial cells, which means it can collect solar energy from both sides of the cell. So that's something to consider, and how that would kind of change like the power output of the cells and whatnot. And then, yeah, I guess he's looking for some computer science help as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna start to look into like how barcoding would work and like tracking inventory throughout the factory.
You just won the prize if you can do that.
Fingers crossed.
I might ask the students if any of them would have suggestions for other people listening as to how to find opportunities. I mean, you guys didn't just stumble into this. You kind of picked up on, I know several of you, and you have certain patterns in your life that help you find things like this to do. You want to advise maybe some younger students who might be participating?
Yeah, sure, I can speak to that. I guess just as like a shout out to ND Energy, if you're at all interested in like the energy space, signing up to get on that listserv and kind of being involved maybe with the Student Energy Board as well, which some of us are involved in, is a great way to like learn about these opportunities. I know for me, and I'm pretty sure Erin and Sylvia might have found out about the service engineering class, but Anne had sent out an email blast to a bunch of energy studies like minors or Student Energy Board students about this class and how their big project this semester was going to be working on this solar plant. So yeah, I think there's different like organizations in campus that you can get involved in if you want to learn more about the kind of local opportunities that we have here.
And I might, if I can chime in, even though I'm not a student, Erin, Kelly, Sylvia, I believe all came through Paul Brenner's class, so a shout out to Paul. James came from a friend and colleague, Mike Kitts. So some of it's just word of mouth through faculty and such, or get involved with them. So.
My advice would probably just be to like show up to things like you're doing now and to like reach out to people because you never know where an opportunity could come from.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I have seen in the students, the three that I know that are represented today, is that they acted. Just like Pat and Marty, you know, you might have an idea, an aspiration, things you want to get done in life, but if you don't do them, then they won't happen. And I think the students that I deal with are the ones that, you know, they kind of prioritize. They take a year to just kind of look around, see what's available on campus. They prioritize, they reach out, and even though sometimes it's kind of scary or you might be afraid of being rejected, you just try it, you go for it, and you ask questions and you network, and things happen after a while.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Anne. And kind of building off of that point, I know when Pat had first reached out to our class and like told us about this, I thought it would be a really cool opportunity that I would love, but I was a little nervous. I didn't really think I had the, I guess, like technical manufacturing kind of skills that I would need to help set up these very complex machines from China. So I was almost a little unsure of my own abilities, and I kind of decided one day to take that leap of faith. You know, like obviously Pat needed us, he needed some engineers. He didn't really have a great selection. So yeah, I think a lot of it is just not being afraid to like kind of go forward with opportunities and not doubting yourself.
So I don't know whether I'm in here, but I had a perfect selection. And the Chinese manufacturers of the equipment didn't want to send the equipment without me having a team of engineers. So I told them I did have a team of engineers. I didn't tell them that they were all 21 years old and still in college, but I said I got some of the best engineers in the community, and they sent the equipment predicated on this team of engineers. So, and it worked out great. And at one point in time, I remember telling, you're an engineer, you're at the same status as they are. And it all worked out great. So I had a perfect team of engineers.
All right. Wow. This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you to Pat, Marty, and the students for joining us tonight. And best of luck in your future endeavors with the company. And I hope the certifications go well. Just one last reminder to the undergrads and the grad students on the call, if you haven't registered to win Domer Dollars, please do so now. And I hope you're able to join us. We have 2 more events for Energy Week. We have a conversation tomorrow at noon about on the future of mobility. And then tomorrow at 7 p.m., we'll be talking with Indie Energy's partner in Puerto Rico, Casa Pueblo. All right, for those of you that would like to stay on the line and talk to the students and Pat a little longer, you're welcome to do so. If not, I will end the presentation for tonight, and thank you for joining us.
And Marty, if you had time to stay,